Hi there, Malcolm here with my 59th Booktube video, and today I'll be bringing you March's wrap-up. I completed 18 titles this month, so better get on with it. First up was Star Wars Vector Volume 1. I don't have the collected trade paperback, so I had to make do with the comics with the adverts in them, but they amount to the same thing in the end. Vector was a major crossroads event through Knights of the Old Republic, Dark Times, Rebellion, and Legacy. Volume 1 features Knights of the Old Republic and Dark Times. The story follows a vicious Sith plague controlled via an amulet, and a Jedi who gets hold of this amulet and attempts to stop the plague from spreading. This was a lot of fun with some zombie type creatures attacking everyone, but like with most crossover series, it really did suffer in terms of the characters, because it doesn't really introduce any new characters. It uses the characters that are already established in the franchises, and if you haven't been reading the story arcs or familiar with those franchises, then you won't know who Zane Carrick is, or Bomo Greenbark. Okay, you might recognise Darth Vader, but it's literally a story that ploughs its way through already ongoing stories. And in terms of the Dark Times one, there's a significant character death, but because you don't know who that was, it has no meaning. But apart from that, I've really enjoyed the artwork, even though it was done over the two styles. So for the Knights of the Old Republic, it's a bit cartoony and zany and fun, whereas the Dark Times version has a more gritty artwork in keeping with the series. Fantastic stuff, and if you can, buy it. Next up, I finished my book of the month, which was Shadow Captain, Book 2 of Revenger by Alistair Reynolds. I've already filmed a review for this one, so I'll leave a link to that below, and you can go check that out to see what I thought of this. I got through it quite quickly, so that should give an indication of what I thought. After I read that, I read Volume 2 of Star Wars Vector, which goes through the Rebellion era, which sees Darth Vader trying to get hold of the plague for his own use, and Legacy, based way after all the characters have all died of old age, and featuring Luke Skywalker's descendant. Again, great stuff if you know who the characters are. If you're not familiar with the franchises when you go into them, then you're going to be lost. Although Rebellion may be more accessible because it's got all the famous characters from the films in them. But I wouldn't say these are for casual readers. You do need to know your stuff. But if you do know your stuff, I would say that these are definitely worth buying. And it's had a very satisfying conclusion to it too. Maybe a theme here, because next up is Volume 2 of Star Wars Dawn of the Jedi, Prisoner of Bogan. In the previous month I read Book 1 of this series and lamented the lack of having Book 2. I found an online comic library and was able to read it. And so I was able to further the story and find out exactly what happens with Zesh on Tython and the oncoming Rakatan Armada. There's some great characters in this, between the Jedi and the Force Hounds. One pretending to be who they're not, the other one not even knowing they're pretending to be who they're not. And expectations are subverted every time as to who is going to be what and where. Really good stuff, booktastic. And naturally I would follow up with Book 3, Force War, one of the last comic series released before Disney bought them out. And as the name suggests, it's all out war as the Rakatan Empire have arrived and the Jedi have to defend themselves from the Infinite Empire. Actual loyalties are revealed, true loyalties are revealed, full of amazing artwork. Absolutely love this series. I would definitely buy it because it is booktastic. And then more Star Wars for you. Star Wars Planet of Twilight by Barbara Hamley. Luke's girlfriend Callista goes missing, Leia gets kidnapped, and there's apparently a threat of a plague that could wipe out the galaxy, maybe. Significantly greater than Children of the Jedi, but still not brilliant. A bit of a mess. There is a story in here that is worth reading. There's an awful lot of guff to get through to read it. Some interesting concepts. It's great seeing Leia wielding the lightsaber at one point. And the idea behind the plague itself is pretty nifty. Some good ideas in this one. Just the execution was a little lacking. I'd say it's worth reading for completeness sake. And after that, I finished reading Grave Secrets by Kathy Reichs. This follows forensic anthropologist Temperance Brennan, who, while digging up a mass grave in Guatemala, waiting for one of their massacres, she gets involved in another case where those in charge of it were responsible for the massacres. So some political intrigue there, a bit of whodunit. There's a dash of really bad romance thrown in here. This is the 6th book of the series I've read. It's probably the worst of the lot so far. It's not bad, it's worth reading. I've read a lot better from her. And after that I finished reading Doctor Who, Dead of Winter by James Goss. This features the 11th Doctor with his newlywed companions Amy and Rory as they wake up, having lost their memories, in some health resort in France just before the French Revolution. Being Doctor Who, there's lots of weirds going on, but told in an interesting way through letters and accounts of what they remember, what they forgot, from various points of view, including the various inhabitants of the retreat. This is actually very enjoyable, some great characters in here. I liked the different ways of having the points of view, even if the actual threat was a little bit vague. But a satisfying, if melancholy ending, I'd buy it. In fact, I already have. And then I finished reading Star Wars, Tag and Bink were here to my boys. Some evenings I haven't got enough time to do 2 individual story times, so they give the boys a shared one. I read this to them and they enjoyed it immensely. This follows Rebel soldiers Tag and Bink as they lampoon their way through the entire Star Wars franchise, somehow being at every single significant event, usually disguised as a stormtrooper or a royal guard or something, and pretty much annoying every single person they come in contact with. Very entertaining. Lovely cartoon style artwork with some real world visual gags put in there as well. And this is definitely one to buy. And after that, I then read Star Wars Dark Times, The Path to Nowhere. I had the first 4 issues of the arc, and I read the 5th one on the online library. This follows the alliance between Jedi Das Jenir and Separatist soldier Bomo Greenbark as they race against the clock to rescue Bomo's wife and daughter from slavery. They join up with the crew of the Umhomeli, or however you pronounce that, who join them on their adventures to rescue Bomo's family. As the title suggests, this is a dark, gritty comic. Not many rays of sunshine in this one, as a Jedi who has lost the Jedi Order kind of loses himself. And in fact, everyone loses something in some way along this journey. And it's the path to nowhere, and it tells you about how well it ends, to be honest. Great stuff, really enjoyed it, and booktastic. And after that I finished reading Porterhouse Blue by Tom Sharp. This gave a satirical look at the Oxbridge traditions and way of life, as a college in Cambridge takes on a brand new master who wants to change things up a bit. You know, crazy things like having female students, a cafeteria in the lunch hall. Needless to say, the rest of the faculty are none too impressed about this and do their best to stymie him at every turn. Not quite as uproariously funny as some of his other works, this is deeply insightful into that way of life and the attitudes of the times back in the 1970s. And frankly, in some cases, they still apply today. For those not familiar with Tom Sharp, if you're easily offended, he's generally best avoided. But if you're willing to look past the offence and actually think about what he's trying to say, he's extremely insightful. And this is worth a read. Back to Star Wars. So next I read Book 2 of the Star Wars Dark Time saga, Parallels. Upon the conclusion to Path to Nowhere, Das Jenner's gone his own way, leaving the crew of the Umeli, I hope you can pronounce it, to go off and do their own thing. In this case, it's a goods exchange, which of course goes wrong. And meanwhile, Jedi Master Kukruk, I forget how we pronounce that, looks after a whole bunch of Jedi younglings in a post-Order 66 universe. Strangely enough, neither story has anything to do with each other, apart from some very, very coincidental happenings. They build a lot upon the previous book by actually getting to know some of the characters of the ship, particularly the only human left on board, Chris. You actually get a good chunk of her backstory. And of course, following this was the event that took place in Vector. Well, I mentioned there was a significant character death. This actually makes you feel it. So having read these now, the death actually has more significance now. Not as good as book 1, but still worth reading, and the artwork is still pretty good. And after that, I finished reading The Casebook of Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. This one features 12 of the last stories written about Sherlock Holmes, and indeed some of the stories feature him in his early retirement, and are arguably probably the worst collection of the bunch. Arthur Conan Doyle had clearly had enough of the characters by this point. I mean, he'd already bumped them off once. They weren't awful, but there wasn't any of the trademark noticing the stained cuff and knowing exactly what the person was doing and all that sort of business. The Problem of Fall Bridge was perhaps the best of the bunch. That one did actually involve a little bit of deductive reasoning there. I'm glad I read it, but only for completeness sake. And after that, I read Star Wars Tales of the Jedi 2, The Fall of the Sith Empire. This is a book I never managed to get my hands on. I did order off Amazon at one point, but after a year of it being delayed and delayed and delayed, I cancelled my order. But thankfully there's now the online comic library. So this continues Kevin J. Anderson's telling of the early Republic Jedi and the emergence of the Sith, as in the species, not the Dark Jedi Order. In book 1, a couple of dim-witted hyperspace-laying trailblazers accidentally discover the Sith homeworld of Korriban, and in bit 2, they equally stupidly lead the Sith back to the Republic. This leads to war and chaos. Despite being written not that long ago, the artwork is dated horribly, and the characters really are just two-dimensional reactionary characters. There's no depth to any of them. I'm glad I finally read it, but I'm also glad that I cancelled my order, because it is purely worth reading for completeness sake. And after that, my library book of the month, Sand by Hugh Howey. I previously read the Silo trilogy and really enjoyed that, so I figured I'd try something else by the same author. I really went into this one blind. I had no idea what it was about. I knew it was a post-apocalyptic. I knew sand featured in it, but that was about it. Indeed, in the post-apocalyptic future, with sand covering virtually everything that was ever known, people eke out a living diving through the sand using special suits that allow them to move through the sand like it's water. Very cool idea there. Deep, deep down, and we're talking about 300 plus metres, to retrieve, scavenge, anything they can to sell or use up on the surface again. And the title features prominently throughout. Sand is mentioned a lot, it features a lot, and indeed every now and again the phrase is used with their accompanying footnote to describe the type of sand that we're talking about here. Whether it's the sand that features at the bottom of a bag, the sand that you scrape off your shoe, the sand that you get coming in the door with the person. I think we had 12 or 13 different types of sand mentioned and explained. So, sand. It's a story that struggled to pin down what it was. It starts off as an adventure story, then it turned into a survival story, and then it became something completely different. I enjoyed it because I was hoping to go back to the adventure bit, but then it went other ways, and yes, it was still satisfying, but I can't say I was disappointed, but there was always something new being thrown in my direction. But yeah, a book that never went in the direction you thought. And my one main complaint about it is how it ended. It ends very abruptly. You've got a thing just about to happen, and you're looking at the very few pages left to go, you're thinking it's not going to happen in what we've got left, and then it does. But it happens and you're told it's happened. It's like, hang on, I wanted to be there and see it happen. So I'm not sure if there's going to be a book 2 in the works showing the events of the last few pages from the point of view of what we missed. I did feel a little bit cheated at the end, thinking, yeah, I wanted to be there because that was all hinted at and I wanted to see more of that, but oh no, okay, I didn't get to see any of that. So, worth reading. Looking forward to seeing if there is going to be a follow-up to this. But as it stands, slightly disappointed in the ending there, because I wanted to be more involved in it. Next up, another library book was Aliens, Life and Death. In this book, marines, xenomorphs, predators and engineers all fighting each other and dying, and I had no idea what was going on in this. Normally when I pick a book up, particularly in the library, I have a look inside the front cover, look on the spine, all over, to see, is it book 1, is it book 2, am I picking up a book halfway through a series? You know, I like to start at the beginning so I know what's going on. There's no real clear indication at the time, and so I read it and thought, I don't know what's going on. I'm judging by the artwork, it's okay, it's not brilliant, but I've seen a hell of a lot worse, and it was readable, so there was that going for it. But I read it and I thought, well, I have no idea what that was all about. And then I noticed in the bottom right-hand corner at the back of the book is a little bit that says book 3. So way to advertise that. I did some research online. Apparently this is another crossover through Predator, Alien, Prometheus and Aliens vs Predator, where the continual story goes through all 4 of the different franchises there. Nice to have known, and typically the library only hold this one. So more online library comic reading for me to catch up if I'm so inclined. So not necessarily a fault of the book, but I'm going to have to say this was boring, nonsensical. I have to revise that if I read it again, having read it in order. And then I moved on to Marvel Runaways, Pride and Joy. My wife and I started watching the TV show, and we're about 3 episodes in now, really enjoying it. She's had this book a while now. I've been kind of curious, but you know, I had stuff to read already. Couldn't hold back any longer, so I read it. Really enjoyed it, very funny. Nice gentle artwork with real looking characters. You know, actual human beings rather than glamour models or whatever. The story follows a bunch of 6 kids who, during an annual meetup, discover that their parents actually belong to a brotherhood of evil or some such. What follows is the children discover hidden talents or powers that they didn't know they had, hence the hidden bit, and are fighting for survival against their evil parents. Really great stuff, thoroughly enjoyed it. Definitely buy it, maybe even Booktastic. And finally, with a few minutes of March left, I managed to squeeze in Goosebumps Book 40, Night of the Living Dummy Part 3 by R.L. Stine. Hadn't read parts 1 or 2, but presumably horrible stuff happens with the previous families. Current family happens to have a dad who is an ex-ventriloquist who happens to find the split-headed dummy in someone's garbage. And of course, as you do, he helped himself and stuck it all back together again. Bad news. Equally bad news is that he has about 13 dummies. Chaos ensues. Bad things happen. Was it scary? No. Did it have the usual stupid jump scares at the end of each chapter? Yes. But it did have a sense of impending doom. in that the two main characters were looking at an increasingly worse punishment for all the atrocities that were going on, because the parents will not believe that dummies are causing all the mayhem. So there was that. And actually, compared to some of the Goosebumps I've read lately, this wasn't half bad, so I'd say it's worth reading. So there we go, 18 books. Yes, quite a lot of Star Wars in that one, but with wanting to continue the Runaways and possibly find out more about this Aliens series, there may be some different franchises being read in the next month, or in the months to come. I hope you enjoyed that. It was certainly daunting going through all those. As usual, if you have anything you'd like to share about these books, whether you'd like to read them or if you have read them, then please, I would like to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below, or leave a link or list to your books read wrap-up, and I'll go and check that out. But as always, no spoilers, and if you can't say anything nice, then please keep it to yourself. Thank you. Until next time, see you later.